March 14th, 1944. 3:47 p.m. A man sits in a cramped London office being interrogated by MI5 counterintelligence officers who believe he's a Nazi spy. Simultaneously, exactly 1,240 kilometers away in Lisbon, Portugal, the same man is sitting in a German Abwehr safe house being debriefed by Hauptmann Klaus Werner about Allied invasion plans. Both meetings are happening at the exact same time. Both intelligence agencies believe he's their exclusive asset. Both are wrong, and both are right. His real name is Erik Andersen, age 29, Danish merchant sailor turned intelligence operative code-named Agent Triangle by the British, Agent Zirkel by the Germans. By the end of this story, you'll understand how one man convinced two enemy intelligence services he was working exclusively for them, fed both sides information that appeared genuine but systematically favored Allied operations, and created the most successful triple-cross operation in espionage history, an operation so complex it remained classified for 80 years, until declassification in January 2024 finally revealed the complete truth. But first, we need to go back exactly 3 years to a shipwreck in the North Atlantic where Andersen made a decision that would change modern intelligence warfare forever. March 7, 1941. North Atlantic, approximately 640 kilometers west of Ireland. The SS Copenhagen, a Danish merchant vessel carrying American machine parts to Britain under Lend-Lease, is torpedoed by German U-boat U-47 at 2:14 a.m. The ship sinks in 11 minutes. Of the 37-man crew, only 12 reach the lifeboats. Erik Andersen, third officer and navigator, survives by clinging to debris for 4 hours before being pulled into lifeboat number 2 by the ship's cook. They drift for 32 hours in freezing Atlantic waters before being spotted by HMS Badsworth, a British destroyer. Andersen arrives in Portsmouth on March 9th, suffering from hypothermia, exhaustion, and survivor's guilt. 16 of his shipmates died in the sinking. During his 2 weeks of recovery at Royal Navy Hospital, Portsmouth, Andersen is visited by a man who introduces himself as Commander Ian Fleming, Naval Intelligence Division. Fleming isn't there for medical reasons. He's assessing Andersen for potential recruitment. Andersen speaks 5 languages fluently: Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, German, and English. He has merchant marine experience across European ports. He's neutral nationality. Denmark is occupied but technically non-belligerent. And most importantly, he has no family, no close ties, and nothing left to lose after watching his crewmates drown in the Atlantic. Fleming makes his pitch on March 18, 1941, and Andersen accepts immediately, driven by one motivation that will define his entire operation: revenge against the U-boat that killed his crew. March 25, 1941. Room 055, Naval Intelligence Division, Admiralty House, London. Commander Fleming presents Andersen to the 20 Committee, the secretive British intelligence unit running double-agent operations, named for the Roman numerals XX, representing double cross. The committee includes 7 senior intelligence officers from MI5, MI6, and military intelligence. Fleming's proposal is unprecedented. Instead of running Andersen as a simple double agent feeding false intelligence to the Germans, they'll create the first operational triple agent, someone who convinces both sides he's betraying the other, while actually serving British strategic interests exclusively. The complexity is staggering. Andersen will need to maintain 2 separate cover identities, 2 sets of intelligence reports, 2 communication protocols, and 2 entirely believable personas. He'll provide the Germans with enough genuine intelligence to establish credibility. Intelligence that's accurate but operationally useless, or already compromised. Simultaneously, he'll feed the British complete details of German intelligence requests, revealing what the Abwehr wants to know and therefore what operations they're planning. The committee debates for 2 hours and 43 minutes. Major Tar Robertson, head of MI5's double agent section, argues the operation is too complex and risks exposing Britain's entire double-cross system if Andersen is discovered. But Colonel John Bevan, controller of London Controlling Section responsible for strategic deception, sees the potential. A double agent can deceive one enemy, but a triple agent can manipulate both sides of the intelligence war simultaneously, creating cascading misinformation that compounds with each transmission. April through July 1941. Special Training School 31, Beaulieu Estate, Hampshire. Anderson undergoes 14 weeks of intensive espionage training alongside 23 other SOE and MI5 recruits. But his curriculum is different. Where others learn how to spy for Britain, Anderson must learn how to appear to spy against Britain convincingly. The training covers 7 specialized areas: radio operation and cipher systems used by German Abwehr, recognition of German military insignia and equipment to prove credibility, methods of secret writing using invisible inks the Germans employ, German intelligence interrogation techniques to survive questioning, creation and maintenance of false identities with authentic documentation, recognition of Allied intelligence counter-surveillance methods so he can appear to evade them, and most critically, psychological compartmentalization, maintaining 2 contradictory belief systems simultaneously without confusion or hesitation. His instructors include 3 former Abwehr officers who defected to Britain and now teach German intelligence protocols. On July 22, 1941, Anderson graduates and receives his operational briefing. He'll be captured by German forces in occupied Denmark, interrogated, and offered recruitment by the Abwehr as an anti-British agent. His cover story is perfect. Danish sailor whose ship was sunk by British negligence leading to his crew's deaths, now bitter and seeking revenge against the Allies. The story is emotionally believable because it's 70% true, with only the target of revenge inverted. On July 28, Anderson is transported by submarine to the Danish coast near Esbjerg, lands in darkness at 2:47 a.m., and walks directly into a German patrol, exactly as planned. August 23, 1941. Anderson arrives in Liverpool aboard the Swedish freighter MS Baltic, passes through British customs using his forged Swedish papers, and reports immediately to MI5 contact point, a bookshop at 47 Dale Street that serves as a dead drop. Within 6 hours, he's debriefing Commander Fleming at a safe house in suburban Childwall. The German intelligence materials are immediately photographed and analyzed. MI5's radio security service confirms the cipher is standard Abwehr manual system, already compromised through other captured agents. The invisible ink formula is common: iron sulfate activated by heat. The communication protocol uses an accommodation address in Lisbon, 32 Rua do Sacramento Alapa, known to be an Abwehr mail drop. Everything checks out. The Germans believe they've recruited a functioning agent. Now begins the complex choreography of the Triple Cross. Anderson will send his first report to the Germans on September 3rd, containing accurate but low-value intelligence. Ship names and sailing dates for 3 cargo vessels. Information already known to German naval intelligence through aerial reconnaissance, but confirming Anderson's access to British port information. Simultaneously, he'll provide MI5 with the complete text of his German report before sending it, plus details of Werner's intelligence requirements revealing German operational priorities. The 20 Committee approves the first transmission with one modification. They add a subtle error in one ship's tonnage. A deliberate mistake that will test whether the Germans share this intelligence with other sources. If the error propagates through German intelligence reports, it proves Anderson's intelligence is being trusted and distributed. On September 3rd at 8:42 p.m., Anderson mails his first letter to Lisbon, beginning a 3-year deception that will involve 247 separate intelligence transmissions to the Germans and 1,393 debriefing sessions with British handlers. The 8th Air Force faces a jet fighter threat no existing doctrine addresses. P-51 Mustangs top out at 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, 103 miles per hour slower than the Me-262. Spitfire Mk-14s reach 448 miles per hour, still 92 miles per hour slower. No Allied fighter can catch Me-262s in level flight, climb with them, or escape if caught low and slow. But Allied intelligence identifies a critical vulnerability. The Jumo 004 turbojet requires careful throttle management. Rapid throttle movements cause compressor stall or flameout. The engine takes 6 to 8 seconds to spool from idle to full thrust, an eternity in combat. And Me-262 pilots must reduce power during landing approach, making them vulnerable at their most critical flight phase. General Jimmy Doolittle issues new tactical directive. P-51 escorts will abandon bomber close escort doctrine and instead patrol Me-262 airfields at low altitude. attacking jets during takeoff and landing when they're slow, low, and vulnerable. The tactic works brutally well. On November 8, 1944, Major Walter Nowotny takes off from Ackmer in Me 262, White 8, when 4 P-51Ds appear at 500 feet, diving through the airfield's flak screen. Nowotny's Jumo 004s are at 40% power, accelerating through 240 miles per hour, too slow to escape, too fast to maneuver. Captain Ernest Feeblecorn fires a 3-second burst from 300 yards. 50 caliber rounds shred Nowotny's right engine. The Me 262 rolls inverted, crashes into woods bordering the runway, explodes on impact. Germany's top jet ace killed by a P-51 he could have easily outrun at altitude. But these airfield attacks highlight another problem. There simply aren't enough Me 262s to matter. The Me 262 wasn't Germany's only operational jet. The Erido R-234 Blitz enters service in September 1944 as the world's first jet bomber. 2 BMW 003 turbojets produce 3,520 pounds combined thrust, pushing the R-234 to 461 miles per hour at 20,000 feet, faster than any Allied fighter except the brand-new P-80 Shooting Star, which doesn't reach Europe before Germany surrenders. The AR-234 carries 3,300 pounds of bombs, features a primitive autopilot for level bombing runs, and most remarkably, proves nearly impossible to intercept. Standard defense against Allied fighters, accelerate to maximum speed, 461 miles per hour, and outrun pursuers. P-51s and Spitfires chase but can't close. The AR-234 operates with near impunity from October 1944 through April 1945, conducting reconnaissance missions over Allied positions and bombing raids on Rhine bridges. Yet, like the Me 262, it deploys too late in too few numbers. Only 214 produced versus the 2,000 required for strategic effect. The R-234's existence proves Germany possessed the technical capability to revolutionize aerial warfare. 2 operational jet types, 1 fighter, 1 bomber, both superior to Allied equivalents. But superior technology can't compensate for resource exhaustion, strategic incompetence, and timing failures. The Allies field their first operational jet, the Gloucester Meteor, in July 1944, using it exclusively for air defense against V-1 flying bombs. Britain restrains the Meteor from combat over Europe specifically to prevent captured aircraft from revealing Allied jet technology to Germans. The caution proves unnecessary. By the time Allied jets reach operational status, Germany's jet advantage has already been squandered through delayed deployment and tactical misuse. Hitler finally authorizes Me 262 fighter production in June 1944, 7 months after his bomber directive, 2 years behind original deployment schedule. Commando Nowotny forms at Ackmer Airfield with 30 Me-262A-1A fighters and Germany's top ace, Major Walter Nowotny, commanding. Nowotny has 258 confirmed victories on the Eastern Front. He understands fighter tactics better than anyone in the Luftwaffe. His tactical doctrine for the Me-262 exploits pure physics. Attack bomber formations from 12 o'clock high at 540 miles per hour, dive through at 7-degree angle, open fire at 600 yards with all 4 Mk-108 cannons, destroy 2 or 3 bombers in a 3-second burst, then use excess speed to zoom climb back to altitude before P-51 escorts react. The closure rate, 940 miles per hour combined, gives bomber gunners less than 2 seconds to track and fire. Mathematically impossible. On October 7, 1944, Commando Nowotny launches its first interception mission against a formation of 187 B-17s. Nowotny leads 6 Me-262s into attack at 28,000 feet, accelerating through 520 miles per hour. The bomber gunners see silver shapes streaking toward them at impossible speed. Nowotny opens fire at 650 yards. The Mk-108's 660-gram high-explosive shells rip through a B-17's left wing. The bomber's wing separates. The fortress spins down. Nowotny's wingman destroys a second B-17 with a 2-second burst. The entire attack lasts 18 seconds before the Me-262's zoom climb beyond P-51 engagement range. 2 bombers destroyed, 0 jet fighters hit. But perfect tactics can't overcome strategic incompetence. Commando Nowotny has only 30 operational aircraft against 1,200 daily bomber sorties. and those 30 jets face fuel shortages, spare parts delays, and undertrained pilots. July 28 through August 15, 1941. Abwehr Interrogation Facility, Esbjerg, Denmark. Andersen's capture appears completely accidental. A Danish sailor who landed from a small fishing boat, caught by coastal patrol at 3:20 a.m. The Germans interrogate him for 4 days, suspicious of anyone arriving from the sea. Andersen maintains his cover perfectly. Bitter survivor of the SS Copenhagen's sinking, blames British incompetence for his crew's death. Unemployed and desperate, no allegiance to occupied Denmark, wants revenge. On August 2nd, he's interviewed by Hauptmann Klaus Werner, Abwehr recruiter specializing in maritime intelligence assets. Werner sees potential: genuine merchant marine background, multilingual, knowledge of British ports, emotional motivation, and crucially, complete lack of ideological commitment. No Nazi beliefs to make him unreliable, just practical revenge. Werner makes his offer on August 9th. Work for German naval intelligence reporting on British shipping movements, convoy schedules, and port facilities. Payment: 300 Reichsmarks monthly, plus bonuses for valuable intelligence. The alternative isn't stated but clear: internment for the war's duration. Andersen accepts, appearing reluctant but financially desperate. The Germans provide him with basic training: a simple letter-based cipher, invisible ink formula, communication protocols through neutral Portugal, and most importantly, his German codename Agent Zirkel, meaning compass in German, appropriate for a navigator. On August 15th, Andersen is released with forged Swedish merchant marine papers and instructions to find work on Allied shipping routes. He departs Denmark on a Swedish cargo vessel bound for Britain, carrying German intelligence materials hidden in a hollowed-out navigational sextant. The operation has begun, and neither the British nor Germans yet realize they're both being played by a man with no loyalty to either side, only to the crewmates who drowned in the Atlantic. Declassified British Air Ministry intelligence reports from April 1945, released to the National Archives in 1995, reveal how seriously the Allies took the jet threat despite its late appearance. Document reference AIR 40-2665 contains technical assessment of captured Me-262s based on flight testing at R.A. Farnborough. British test pilot Captain Eric Brown flies Me-262 serial number Wolven on multiple evaluation flights, reporting, "Speed advantage overwhelming. Nothing Allied flies approaches this performance. Acceleration exceptional, 0 to 500 miles per hour in 90 seconds. Handling generally docile except at high angles of attack where wing sweep causes pitch-up tendency. Armament devastating. Mk-108 cannons would destroy bomber structures with 2 to 3 hits." But Brown also notes critical weaknesses. Engines unreliable. Flameout occurred twice during 6 test flights. Throttle response inadequate for combat maneuvering. Requires 6 to 8 seconds to transition idle to full power. Landing speed excessive. 240 km per hour versus 170 for Mustang, creating vulnerability during approach. Range insufficient for strategic bombing. 650 km combat radius, limits operational flexibility. The assessment concludes, Me-262 represents quantum leap in fighter performance, but technical immaturity and resource limitations prevented achieving potential strategic effect. Allied victory resulted from overwhelming numerical superiority, rather than technical parity. Germany fielded 300 operational jets against 63,000 Allied aircraft. A separate top-secret assessment models alternate scenarios where Me-262 deployment occurred in 1942 as originally scheduled, concluding, earlier deployment would have severely disrupted strategic bombing campaign, potentially extending war duration by 18-24 months. The documents remain classified until 1995, because they acknowledge how close Germany came to achieving temporary air superiority through technological revolution. Germany produces 1,133 Me-262s between April 1944 and April 1945, impressive considering round-the-clock Allied bombing. But actual operational deployment tells a grimmer story. Of those 1,433 aircraft, only 300 reach combat units. The remainder sit on factory floors awaiting engines. Jumo 004 production can't keep pace because Allied bombing destroyed the precision manufacturing capacity required for turbine blades. Each engine requires 1/200 individual turbine blades machined to tolerances of 0.05 millimeters. Pre-war, Germany could produce 200 engines monthly. By late 1944, production drops to 60 engines monthly due to machine tool losses, skilled worker casualties, and raw material shortages. Even completed engines fail frequently. Average service life is 25 hours before turbine blade failure requires complete rebuild. Compare that to the 1,500-hour lifespan of a Daimler-Benz piston engine. Pilots joke grimly, the Me-262's engines last longer than the pilots flying them. Worse, fuel shortages ground available aircraft. The Jumo 004 burns J2 jet fuel, a kerosene-based blend requiring specific refining processes. By February 1945, J2 production has collapsed to 30% of requirements due to bombing of synthetic fuel plants. Aircraft sit on dispersal fields fully armed, but unable to fly because no fuel exists. And when Me-262s do fly, pilot inexperience causes losses. The aircraft requires 240 km per hour landing speed, 60 km per hour faster than Bf-109s, and the turbojet's throttle lag means pilots can't add power quickly during approach corrections. Stall spin accidents kill more Me-262 pilots than Allied fighters. The operational readiness rate, percentage of aircraft actually available for missions, averages 35%. On any given day, the Luftwaffe can launch perhaps 30 Me-262s against 1-200 Allied bombers. The mathematics doom the defense before it begins. January 1945. Lieutenant General Adolf Galland, just relieved as General der Jagdflieger for defying Hitler's bomber directive, forms Jagdverband 44, an elite Me-262 unit composed entirely of veteran fighter aces. His roster reads like a Luftwaffe Hall of Fame: Gerhard Barkhorn with 301 victories, Johannes Steinhoff with 176, Heinz Baer with 220, Walter Krupinski with 197. These pilots have 3,000 combined kills on conventional fighters. Now, they fly the Me-262 with tactics refined through bitter experience. Galland's doctrine: 4 aircraft flights attack bomber formations from astern at 30-degree dive angle, open fire at 800 meters with all 16 cannons, 64 rounds per second of 30mm high explosive, then split S down and away before escorts react. On April 7, 1945, Jagdverband 44 intercepts a formation of 132 B-17s over Munich. Galland leads 12 Me-262s into attack at 27,000 feet. The jets accelerate through 520 miles per hour, close to 800 meters, fire 3-second bursts. 6 B-17s explode in the first pass, wings separating, fuselages disintegrating. The formation scatters. Galland's pilots reform, attack again. 4 more B-17s destroyed, 10 bombers in 8 minutes, 0 Me-262s lost. But 10 bombers mean nothing when 1-200 fly daily. Galland knows the war is lost. He's fighting for professional pride now, demonstrating what could have been if the Me-262 had deployed as originally intended. 3 weeks later, Jagdverband 44 disbands when Allied ground forces overrun its airfield. Final tally: 50 Allied aircraft destroyed in 2 months of operations. Galland survives the war, later writes, "The Me-262 could have changed history. Instead, we received it too late, in too few numbers, misused strategically. A revolutionary weapon wasted by strategic incompetence. The Me-262's technical specifications dominate every Allied aircraft. Maximum speed, 540 miles per hour versus P-51's 437, a 103 mile per hour advantage. Climb rate, 3,900 feet per minute versus P-51's 3,200, a 22% advantage. Service ceiling, 37,500 feet versus P-51's 41,900. Slight Allied advantage, but irrelevant since most combat occurs at 25,000 feet, where the Me-262's speed dominates. Armament: 4 Mk-108 30mm cannons firing 330-gram high-explosive shells at 650 rounds per minute. Each hit equivalent to 550 caliber hits. Effective firing range: 600 yards versus P-51's 400 yards, due to superior ballistics. Kill probability: 85% with 3 hits versus 45% with 30 hits from 50 caliber. Every technical metric favors the Me-262, yet it achieves minimal strategic impact. Final tally: Me-262 pilots claim 542 Allied aircraft destroyed between October 1944 and May 1945. Impressive but statistically insignificant against 63,000 Allied aircraft operational in the European theater. The kill ratio is extraordinary. Me-262 units lose approximately 100 aircraft in air-to-air combat while destroying 542 enemy aircraft, a 5.4-to-1 ratio. But 100 losses represent 33% of all Me-262s reaching operational status, unsustainable attrition. The Luftwaffe needs 2,000 operational Me-262s to achieve air parity. They field 300 maximum. The technology is revolutionary. The tactics are effective. But strategic level incompetence in deployment timing, role assignment, and resource allocation negates tactical excellence. Declassified post-war studies calculate. If the Me-262 had entered service in July 1942 with 500 operational aircraft focusing exclusively on bomber interception, Allied strategic bombing would have collapsed by January 1943. Instead, it enters service in October 1944 with 30 aircraft configured wrong. 2 years too late to matter strategically. Let's construct the counterfactual timeline using declassified documents and technical analysis. July 1942. Me-262 enters service as pure interceptor, 2 years ahead of actual deployment. Germany produces 50 aircraft monthly, reaching 400 operational jets by January 1943. Allied bomber losses spike to 8% per mission, mathematically unsustainable. Strategic bombing of German industry ceases by March 1943. Without sustained bomber raids, German aircraft production stabilizes at 3,000 fighters monthly, instead of the historical 1,800 achieved under bombing pressure. Ball-bearing production, critically vulnerable to bombing, continues uninterrupted, preventing the bottleneck that historically limited tank production. Synthetic oil refineries operate at full capacity, producing adequate fuel for extended operations. The Allied invasion of France, historically June 1944, gets delayed to 1945 due to Luftwaffe air superiority over the Channel. Casualties multiply when the invasion finally occurs. German forces have 18 additional months to fortify coastal defenses, deploy more panzer divisions, and position reserves. But the counterfactual timeline also requires addressing Allied responses. The United States accelerates its own jet program. The P-80 Shooting Star reaches operational status by late 1943 instead of April 1945. Britain deploys Gloucester Meteors to escort duty by early 1944. By mid-1944, both sides field comparable jet technology, and the aerial war reverts to numerical advantage, which the Allies possess overwhelmingly. The Soviet advance from the east continues regardless. Jet fighters don't stop tank armies. By mid-1945, Soviet forces reach the Elbe, whether Germany has jets or not. The most probable outcome: European war extends 12 to 18 months. Allied casualties increase 30–40%, but final result remains unchanged: Germany's defeat. The Me-262 could have prolonged the war, increased casualties, delayed victory. But end the war early? Only if deployed against Germany's enemies, which brings us to an even stranger what-if scenario. April 1945. As Allied armies advance into Germany, Operation Lusty, Luftwaffe secret technology, mobilizes teams of intelligence officers, engineers, and pilots to capture intact German aircraft before Soviet forces reach them. Priority target: the Me-262 and all associated documentation. Colonel Harold Watson leads the American team, racing Soviet units to German airfields. At Lechfeld Airfield near Munich, Watson's team discovers 30 Me-262s in various stages of completion, complete technical manuals, and surviving Messerschmitt engineers willing to explain the aircraft's systems. Watson arranges immediate flight testing. Several Me-262s are flown by American and British test pilots, gathering performance data that will inform Allied jet development for the next decade. The captured aircraft are disassembled, crated, and shipped to Wright Field, Ohio for detailed analysis. Messerschmitt engineers are recruited under Operation Paperclip, the program bringing German scientists to America. Their expertise accelerates American jet programs, including the F-86 Sabre, which uses swept-wing design principles derived directly from Me-262 research. The Soviet Union captures similar numbers of Me-262s plus production tooling from factories in their occupation zone. The aircraft directly influences Soviet jet development. The Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-15 that appears in 1949 uses swept wings and similar aerodynamic principles, though powered by a reverse-engineered British engine rather than German turbojets. The Me-262's technical legacy extends decades beyond its brief operational career. Modern jet fighters, swept wings, turbine engines, high-speed interception tactics all trace lineage to the decisions made by Messerschmitt's engineers in 1939-1940. But the aircraft's strategic impact remains negligible, a testament to how thoroughly strategic incompetence can negate revolutionary technology. Could one aircraft have ended World War II 2 years early? The declassified evidence provides the answer: not ended, but significantly altered. If the Me-262 had entered service in July 1942 as originally scheduled, deployed exclusively as an interceptor in numbers exceeding 500 aircraft, the physics are undeniable. Allied strategic bombing would have collapsed within 6 months. The 8–12% loss rate per mission that Allied intelligence projected was mathematically unsustainable. Without sustained bombing campaigns, German industrial production would have stabilized at 30–40% higher output through 1943–1944, producing more fighters, tanks, and submarines. The Allied invasion of France would have faced significantly stronger opposition, increasing casualties and potentially delaying D-Day by 6 to 12 months. Soviet advances from the east would have encountered more robust German defenses with better air support. The war in Europe, which ended in May 1945, might have extended through late 1945 or early 1946. Allied casualties, historical total of 850,000 for the European theater, could have increased by 250,000, 350,000. But several factors prevent the Me-262 from ending the war early for Germany. First, the aircraft's operational radius of 650 kilometers limits it to defensive operations over German territory. It cannot strike Allied air bases in England or support offensive operations deep into Soviet territory. Second, even optimized production couldn't exceed 600–800 operational aircraft against 63,000 Allied aircraft. Numerical inferiority of 100–1 remains insurmountable, regardless of technical superiority. Third, the Me-262 doesn't address Germany's critical vulnerabilities: oil shortages, manpower exhaustion, strategic encirclement by 2 superpowers. Fourth, Allied jet development would have accelerated in response. The P-80 and Meteor would have reached operational status 6 to 12 months earlier, neutralizing the Me-262's advantage by mid-1944. The final analysis: the Me-262 represents the most significant what-if in aviation history. A revolutionary technology whose potential was systematically squandered through delayed development, strategic misallocation, and Hitler's personal incompetence. It could have prolonged German resistance, increased Allied casualties, delayed victory. But it could not have reversed the fundamental strategic realities. Germany fighting a 2-front war against enemies with combined populations 5 times larger, industrial capacity 10 times greater, and resource access that Germany could never match. Superior technology can win battles. It rarely wins wars when strategic fundamentals are catastrophically unfavorable. The Me-262 proves that lesson definitively.